Hello, welcome back to Beyond the Veil background information. We're doing another character profile, and once again it's a Viper Clan one. They're going to be Viper Clan ones for a little while, I think, really. But today we're doing about Sharp Pierson, who is in Time to Wed. So, as usual, I'll give you a little quote from one of the stories they're in. I'll talk to you a little about my thing behind the character, like why I chose to make them. Sometimes I do. Some of them are just very basic, but then I'll go on and do a brief profile. Now, because it's a partner to a member of the Viper clan, they don't actually have full profiles up on Patreon except in this audio form. So it's very much the first time they've got details out about them. So hopefully you'll find it interesting. So let's get started. It was as the mood calmed and Odette was busy back to sterilizing that she suddenly felt the presence of the turned vampire beside her, a soft expression on his face and his voice lit with a Caribbean accent that made her skin tingle in excitement as he spoke. Quote from Time to Wed. This is Sharp Pearson. Yes, there is a bit of a joke in that name, but it did rather work for a vampire. Initially with him and Odette, theirs was just going to be kept as a first, one of my Patreon exclusive things, but when I just felt they were so sweet and normal with each other, and then later felt excited about writing about their daughter's situation too, I could not help but actually give them a proper story that was all their own. I will admit that I don't know if I've written him well at all. I just sort of wrote more on their personality, and Sharp is rather confident and extrovert, and he tends to not be fazed by some of the things in the veil that others should. I really enjoyed him having his meeting with Uncle Taliesin as well, to see if he was aware of the situation with Odette's family, especially because no matter who or what your background, that was going to happen no matter what to any of the partners of his family. But of course, if you read the book and you feel I have written him in a way that doesn't feel right, please let me know where, what, and how to change it so I can use that for future characters too and future work. Name: Sharp Pearson. Position: turned vampire. Story featured in Time to Wed and Spineless Serpent. Role: male romantic interest. Gender: male. Description: speaking with a Caribbean accent, with dark skin but eyes that are the shade of brown honey but glisten golden in the light. He is tall, with a broad, strong body that's good for lifting, and his hair is a kind of black that disappears into the night sky and is in simple curls that sit down to the top of his neck. And yet I kept trimmed due to the need to wear the ambulance hat so people know who he is. His smile is always thoughtful, and he gives a soft chuckle when he's intrigued, amused, or even slightly embarrassed by things at times. As a bat, he turns into one that's similar to a large molossus bat, and he's one of the strongest flyers in the area. Realm: the Veil. Abilities: increase speed, strength, and healing ability without the need to have blood as much as their forebears. He has keen senses and the ability to turn into a bat, and Sharp uses these senses and abilities to aid work as an emergency worker. Master: the Almighty. Personality: extrovert, brave, caring, and always able to see the good side of things. He sometimes comes across as carefree and a bit of a charmer, but he's serious about his work and about the people he likes. He's very affectionate and gentle with the people that mean the most to him. And despite the fact he deals with prejudice that is not necessarily as prevalent elsewhere in the Vale for a vampire, he doesn't let it stop him from doing his job or being around the people he loves. Relations: unclear, was turned by a vampire woman formerly of the elite that was friendly with Taliesin Vilmore. History: born outside the Vale in London to an interracial couple at a time where it was not considered suitable, but with the influx of migration from the colonies and issues of World War One, Sharp grew up in a rundown area, getting the usual racism as well as classism at the time. His father worked particularly at the docks with a lot of other Caribbean men, and Sharp had to grow up fast at a time when everyone was being drafted to a war he had no clue what it was about. During his early teens, he got lucky in having good grades and being able to get into the medical profession, where his job was to collect people and take them in the ambulance. He dealt with a lot of rubbish for it, many people not willing to let someone like him touch them, but Sharp liked helping people and he liked his job. However, things took an unusual turn when he was sent to a site where a strange, rich-looking woman seemed to be dying and calling for help. When he approached her, She showed no care to his race or position and said she would give him a wonderful life if he gave her blood. Sharp was confused, understanding she probably needed a transfusion, and calmly said he would give her blood. At which point he found himself being bitten violently in the wrist. It was terrifying. Someone he'd assumed was human had stabbed their teeth into his arm, and when he tried to pull away, she seemed to hang off him like a snake, and he felt himself becoming weaker with each moment and concerned that his usual workmate was nowhere in sight. When Sharp woke up, when Sharp woke up, it was with the taste of blood in his mouth and the woman standing over him. He was not in the same street, and she was looking rather miserable about it all. He'd learnt he'd been turned into a vampire and moved to an area called the Vale. It was a bit of a chaotic change in pace, but he found his seeming godmother was true to at least keeping him safe and comfortable. She found him a cheap place to live, taught him what to do and how to live, and brought him to the Vale agents who helped arrange him to go on more medical courses and get his job back, but in a world where most did not even blink at who was coming to save them. He found, though, if there was one place that the racism he'd left behind still existed, it was within the vampires, and it was not even because he was black, but because he'd been turned, not born to it. They had issues with his race too, but that was only because he had no bloodline that held nobility or relation to the other black vampires. Even other black vampires looked down on him for being turned. All the same, there were no laws that meant he couldn't do anything or go anywhere or be anything, and so Sharp found it a little easier to actually have a life. When the Second World War meant that bombs were occasionally dropping on the Vale regions of London too, Sharp found himself busy working with a group of particular female vampires that did nursing, and amongst them met someone that caught his attention immediately. Final comments: I like Sharp a lot. He's very good for Odette, and he's very charming, and at least I think he is. And as a couple, they're a really lovely couple. Like, they suit each other, and I wasn't too sure if they would because of how Odette can be, so it was nice that it all worked out together. Next time, I'm going to be introducing you to a villain from one of my latest ones from the Crooked Serpent. Yeah, you get to meet Sturm, and just how awful he is. So, thank you for listening. Bye.